The squad thought the week arrived at the airbase just after sunrise, the same drills, the same carrying a single duffel bag, routine, and a calm expression the next morning gave away everything about who she really was. The alarm on the base was loud, not the training alarm, not alive with the sound of jet engines. The one every pilot recognizes immediately, almost like she had walked these grounds 100 times. Something is happening. No one knew her yet, and it's not practice. And she didn't try to draw attention. Every pilot was called into the briefing room, signed her papers. No one waited for instructions. No one was any other new pilot would. Even Harris, she wasn't like the others at all. The commander walked in with a folder stamped with a red label. The squadron she was joining was known for two things. That was the first sign that this wasn't just a normal mission problem. He looked at the place where respect wasn't given, said the kind of words that usually earned the hard way. We have a real situation. Most of the pilots, there were men. A rescue team has gone missing behind enemy lines. And what they saw was a small, the last signal came from a hostile zone. Didn't brag. We need a pilot and didn't try to impress experience. To them, low visibility, she looked like someone who wouldn't last and long. Proven combat when control. She stepped into the squadron briefing room for the first time, no one moved. Everyone the commander continued. Some just glanced and looked away. This is not others optional. Stared a little longer. If we delay exchanging silent jokes, every pilot waited for names. Maybe Harris, maybe one of the senior flyers, Captain Harris. But the commander didn't even look at and smirked openly. Instead, he turned whispering something to the guy sitting next to him. You're the mission turned pilot. Into a laugh. The silence Sarah in the room turned but heavy. She didn't react. Some pilots she just took confused. A seat in the back row. Some looked shocked. The squadron commander laughed out of disbelief and began introductions. He spoke before one by one. The pilots stood and introduced themselves. Sir, with all due respect, she just got here. The room was full of names like more flight hours, Razor, more Ghost. The commander cut him off sharply. And Falcon. You have more talking hours. Each one said their call sign with pride. She has more like combat acted applause. The room then went was Sarah's turn. Quiet. She stood up. The commander placed the file on the table. Sarah's file. Viper 1. The one no one had explanation before. No ego. He opened it not just for the name. That was the moment the first laugh broke the silence. Inside were mission summaries, and it came from Harris. Real ones. Viper not training reports, he repeated. Not simulation. Choking on his own full lab. Combat logs. Who gave you that? Heavy check mark. A video game. To ground strike. A few confirmed. Others chuckled. Heavy check someone mark. Hostile vehicle convoy. She probably destroyed. Picked it herself to heavy sound check cool. Mark. Night. Sarah didn't look mission. At any of them. Successful. She didn't defend the name. Heavy check mark. Zero civilian casualties. Didn't even blink. Heavy she check mark. Sat back down like nothing happened. But her silence bothered Harris heavy more than any call sign would have. Guys like him hated that was the moment Harris because they didn't understand it. What no one in that room knew was that drinking without care wasn't chosen by until he heard the real meaning behind the nickname. It wasn't from a simulator or a training exercise. His cup stayed halfway in the real air. One that wasn't even recorded in normal military files. The room wasn't laughing anymore. She had flown in a combat zone. The commander continued had only seen drama screens. But for she truth, had made decisions. She didn't choose her call sign. Real lives. Her team gave it to people who fought beside her. The men alive today gave it to her not as a joke, and they didn't give it as a mark of respect. They gave it didn't say any of that. She didn't need to. Proud. While the rest of the pilots were still whispering. She didn't enjoy the shock. Sarah was quietly studying everything. She simply nodded. Who paid attention? Who was careless? When do we leave? The commander. No hesitation. Respected themselves. No fear. She wasn't there to be liked. Just readiness. She was there to do the job. The commander answered. When the meeting ended, most pilots walked out in groups. You pick your support. Still laughing. That line changed. They already knew who she was because now everyone in the room understood. But she wasn't just a mission. She had been underestimated before, and the quiet and every time the same was the one they'd now have to trust in the beginning. They stayed silent who mocked her earlier now stepped forward. She paused for a moment without watching a jet take off, not because the engine roaring like thunder against the sky, but because she earned it. She didn't smile. Harris didn't something in her eyes changed. He just stood like she was remembering another sky, replaying another joke he ever made about another moment when she wasn't just every new pilot. Every assumption, the only one between her team and death, and for the first time he realized that a rookie. She had no idea they were staring at the most experienced pilot. He was the one who needed to prove himself to her. Sarah didn't look at him with anger, but not because she told them. She looked at him the same way she did on day one, because the sky never lies. And because the name Viper 1 because she didn't care about winning arguments. The next morning, she only cared about winning missions. This time, while the others rushed to their first full briefing Harris stayed frozen where he was. Pilots were relaxed, finally understanding the difference between acting like a pilot, acting like the day was going to be just another routine training schedule. The one they doubted was now the only one they needed quietly, and the name he laughed at keeping now the name the mission depended on. She didn't try to fit in. She didn't force conversations. She just observed. Captain Harris was louder than everyone, as usual. He was standing with a small group, retelling the joke from yesterday like it was the funniest thing in the world. Viper 1, he said again, laughing. I mean, come on. who calls themselves that. She looks more like Butterfly One, if anything. The others laughed, not because they were funny people, but because they didn't want to look weak in front of him. That was how things worked in most units. One loud guy makes the rules and everyone else pretends to agree. But Sarah wasn't bothered. She knew something they didn't. She knew the kind of men who laughed like that. And she knew how quickly they went quiet when reality hit. The commander called everyone to attention and began the introductions properly. Each pilot had to give their flight history and number of logged hours. One by one, they listed their stats. 800 hours. 1,200 hours. 1,600 hours. The squad nodded and murmured in approval. Harris spoke proudly. 2,100 hours. Combat support, Pacific Sector. He said it like he expected applause. Then it was Sarah's turn. She stood up slowly and gave only the basic facts. Lieutenant Sarah Blake. 1,900 flight hours. Before she could continue, Harris interrupted with a smirk. Simulation hours count too, I guess. Everybody chuckled again. Sarah didn't even look at him. She didn't respond, didn't defend herself, didn't bother correcting him. She just finished. 900 of those hours were in active zones. The room fell quieter for a second, because most of them didn't even have 300 combat hours. But Harris couldn't let his ego loose. He clapped slowly and sarcastically. Wow, big numbers. Must have been a busy video game. Again, laughter from the small crowd. Sarah didn't react. She didn't try to prove anything. Her silence made Harris more uncomfortable than any argument could. After the briefing, they moved to the hangar floor for gear checks. Sarah worked fast, focused, neat. The way someone does when they've done this more times than they can count. Harris, meanwhile, kept talking loudly like the hangar was his stage. He pointed at Sarah's helmet and said, "So, does your helmet have little fangs painted on it too? Since you're the Viper and all." A couple of pilots waited for Sarah to snap back. But she didn't. She simply checked the seal on her oxygen mask and said nothing. She didn't have to defend the name. The name had already been proven, just not here. The truth was, the call sign Viper 1 wasn't given to her because she was fast or sharp or cool. It was given because she was deadly accurate. On her last mission, she had flown through a narrow canyon at night, low visibility, hostile fire, and still managed to strike targets within seconds, while protecting a ground team pinned down with no escape. She didn't brag about it. She didn't wear it like a medal. She just carried it like a responsibility. But no one here knew. Not yet. Later that day, the squad had their first aerial simulation drill. A simple exercise, mock dogfight sky maneuvers. Harris and his friends were excited, ready to show off. Sarah stayed calm, adjusting her gloves, going through quiet mental checklists. Harris walked past her plane and tapped the metal. "Try not to crash out there, Viper," he said with a grin. "We just got these jets polished." Sarah only replied with 4 quiet words. "I don't crash, Captain." It wasn't said with attitude. It wasn't said like a threat. It was said like a fact. When the jets took off, most of the squad thought they already knew how the day would go. The loud pilots would win, the quiet one would struggle. But the sky has no favorites. It only listens to skill. And very soon, the same people who were laughing were about to watch something they didn't expect. The jokes were almost over. The sky was about to answer for her. And after today, Viper 1 would no longer be a name they laughed at. It would be a name they remembered. Not because she said anything, but because she let her flying speak. The simulation drill ended, and the jets landed one by one. Most of the pilots walked back into the hangar talking loudly, replaying their best moments, bragging about how they almost got a lock on, how they outmaneuvered someone, how they would have won if the system wasn't glitching. Harris was the loudest once again, acting like he had just won a real battle, not a practice round. But there was one thing nobody wanted to admit. Sarah didn't lose a single round. In fact, not one of them even came close to locking onto her jet. She moved too fast, too smooth, too precise. Some thought it was luck. Others thought maybe the system gave her an advantage. No one wanted to believe she was actually better. Harris especially. He walked around telling everyone how he was just warming up, How next time he'd show her who the real pilot was. But inside, something bothered him. She wasn't just good. She was calm. No panic, no overcorrection, no wasted moves. She didn't fly like a beginner. She flew like someone who had done this in the real world, under pressure, with lives on the line. But Harris pushed the thought away. He was too proud to admit it. Later that evening, the squad had a short debriefing with the commander. He didn't praise or criticize anyone. He just spoke facts. Only one pilot completed every objective with no error. Everyone looked around, expecting it to be Harris or maybe one of the senior pilots. But then the commander looked straight at Sarah. Some pilots blinked. Some frowned. Harris shifted in his seat, annoyed. The commander didn't smile, didn't exaggerate. He just said, "Lieutenant Blake's performance is consistent with high-level combat experience." A few heads turned. Harris scoffed under his breath. Combat experience? She probably flew supply runs. He was wrong. But he didn't know how wrong. Because the truth was, Sarah Blake had never flown supply missions. She wasn't a transport pilot. She wasn't a rookie. She wasn't some lucky simulator expert. She had been part of a classified task force, the kind of missions that don't appear in public reports, don't get talked about in the news, and don't get written into service records until years later. She had flown missions where failure didn't mean losing points, it meant men on the ground dying. Her call sign Viper 1 wasn't a nickname. It was a name spoken with respect by soldiers who survived because of her. She had flown into ambush zones where the enemy had anti-air weapons waiting. She had guided medevac craft through dust storms with zero visibility. She had done night strafing runs so close to the ground that the enemy could hear her engines before they saw her. She had flown while being targeted by real missiles, not simulated warnings, not red lights on a computer screen, real heat-seeking, kill-on-impact missiles. But nobody here knew that. They just saw a quiet woman with a calm face and a call sign they thought was funny. The commander knew more than he said. He had seen her file. He had read mission reports the others weren't cleared to see. He knew that the Air Force didn't just assign someone like Sarah to a training squadron for fun. Someone sent her here for a reason. Someone wanted her close, waiting for something. That night, while the others were joking around in the mess hall, Sarah sat alone at a corner table, sipping water, reviewing flight maps. She wasn't angry, offended, or bothered. She was just patient. She had learned long ago that respect from the untested never mattered. Respect from the battlefield did. Harris walked past her table, still full of ego, holding a drink and laughing with two other pilots. He glanced at Sarah and smirked. "You fly neat, I'll give you that. But this isn't a game, Viper. Real combat isn't clean. You'll understand if you ever reach it." Sarah looked up at him calmly, no emotion, no reaction. She could have told him she had already been in real combat, more times than he could imagine. She could have told him she had watched men bleed out through her cockpit glass while calling in fire support so they could live. She could have told him she had heard the last words of soldiers over radio static because she arrived 1 minute too late. But she didn't, because she didn't need to prove herself with words. The sky had already seen what she could do. The ground had already felt it. The men who lived because of her already knew. And soon, this squadron would know too. Not through speeches, not through bragging, but through truth. Because the past she never spoke about was on its way back. And when it arrived, the name Viper 1 would no longer be a joke. It would be the only thing standing between life and death. The real training began the next day, and this time it wasn't just simulation. It was full-force aerial combat drills, formation flying, evasive maneuvers, emergency response, and live reaction timing. The kind of training that shows who is just a good pilot, and who is a real combat pilot. Everyone suited up, but there was a different kind of energy in the air. Some pilots were excited, some were nervous, and some, like Harris, were already acting like they'd won before flying. He kept talking loud enough so everyone could hear. "This is where we see who's real and who just got lucky yesterday," he said, staring directly at Sarah with a smirk. Sarah didn't even look at him. She didn't respond. She never played his game, and that bothered him more than insults ever could. They walked toward the jets, and Sarah checked every instrument with a calm focus most people didn't have. She moved like someone who had done all this many times. Not once, not twice, but in real pressure with real consequences. Once they took off, the drills began. The sky turned into a chessboard. Planes cutting through clouds, climbing sharp, diving fast, turning tight. Everyone was trying to prove something. Everyone was trying to outperform the others. Everyone was pushing to be noticed. Except Sarah. She wasn't trying to be the fastest or the flashiest. She was flying like she was working, not showing off. Every move she made had purpose. No wasted fuel. No wasted motion. No ego. The instructors on the ground watched through screens, tracking every plane. They noticed something the other pilots didn't. Whenever a plane drifted out of alignment or made a risky move, Sarah corrected before they even realized they were drifting. She wasn't just flying her jet. She was watching everyone at once. One instructor leaned back and said quietly, "That's not training reflex. That's battlefield reflex." Meanwhile, Harris tried to chase her plane in a mock combat run. He wanted one thing, to lock onto her jet just once, just to prove she wasn't as good as everyone was starting to think. But no matter what angle he came from, Sarah saw it before it happened. She didn't jerk the jet or panic. She didn't even use full power. She just shifted in the perfect second. Like she already knew his move. Harris started getting frustrated. His voice filled the radio. "Come on, Viper. Stop running and fight." Sarah didn't reply. She didn't waste a single word. She just flew. The drill continued, and one by one, pilots started making mistakes. Pulling too high, stalling too low, wasting fuel, losing speed. But Sarah stayed steady, smooth, controlled. Even the instructors noticed something important. Her heartbeat rate, visible on the monitor, never spiked. Not once. She flew like she was breathing. When the jets landed after hours in the sky, everyone looked exhausted, except her. She stepped out of the cockpit calm. Same as before, same relaxed steps, same quiet eyes. Inside the hangar, the tension was different now. No one was joking. No one was laughing. Even the pilots who mocked her earlier were now watching her differently. Not with insults, but confusion. Like they were trying to understand what they were missing. Harris tried to hold onto his pride. "Nice flying," he said loudly. "But that was just training. Real combat is different." Sarah glanced at him, not angry, not emotional, just patient. Then she answered with one calm sentence. "I know. I've been there." The room went silent for a moment. Some pilots looked at each other. Some raised their eyebrows. Even Harris didn't know what to say, because for the first time she hinted at something real. Not bragging, not trying to prove, just stating a fact. And that one simple line hit harder than any speech. She had been there. While they were learning it, she had lived it. While they were imagining danger, she had flown through it. While they were building confidence, she had built survival. That night, while others sat in groups, whispering about her, Sarah stayed alone again. Not because she was distant, but because she was used to being the quiet one in the room full of noise. The one who didn't talk about what she had done because the people who needed to know already knew. But something was changing. The squad was no longer laughing at her call sign. They were starting to wonder about it. What mission gave her the name Viper One? Who trusted her enough to put her in real danger? What did she do out there that none of them had ever done? And the answer was coming. Not in the form of a story, but in the form of a mission that would test all of them, and prove why the silent pilot was the deadliest one in the room. The squad thought the week would continue with normal training, the same drills, the same practice missions, the same routine. But the next morning, everything changed. The alarm on the base went off, not the training alarm, not the testing tone, but the real one. The one every pilot recognizes immediately. The one that means something is happening, and it's not practice. Within minutes, every pilot was called into the briefing room. No one was joking now. No one was relaxed. Even Harris looked serious. The commander walked in with a folder stamped with a red label. Classified. That was the first sign that this wasn't just a normal mission. He looked at the squad, then said the kind of words that make a room freeze. "We have a real situation. A rescue team has gone missing behind enemy lines. Communication is down. The last signal came from a hostile zone. We need a pilot with precise strike experience, low visibility flight skill, and proven combat control. The room stayed silent. No one moved. The commander continued. This is not a drill. This is not optional. If we delay, they die. Every pilot waited for a name, maybe Harris, maybe one of the senior flyers. But the commander didn't even look at them. Instead, he turned toward Sarah. Lieutenant Blake, you're the mission pilot. The silence in the room turned heavy. Some pilots looked confused. Some looked shocked. Harris almost laughed out of disbelief. He spoke before he could stop himself. Her? Sir, with all due respect, she just got here. I've got more flight hours, more. The commander cut him off sharply. You have more talking hours, Captain Harris. She has more combat hours. The room went absolutely quiet. Then the commander placed the file on the table, Sarah's file, the one no one had access to before. He opened it not for her, but for everyone else. Inside were mission summaries. Real ones. Not training reports. Not simulations. Full combat logs. Heavy checkmark, air-to-ground strike confirmed. Heavy checkmark, hostile vehicle convoy destroyed. Heavy checkmark, night extraction mission successful. Heavy checkmark, 0 civilian casualties. Heavy checkmark, ground team survival rate 100%. Heavy checkmark, call sign earned, Viper 1. That was the moment Harris stopped breathing mid-sip. He had been holding a cup, drinking without a care, until he heard the real meaning behind the nickname he used as a joke. His hand froze. His cup stayed halfway in the air. He didn't blink. He didn't speak. The room wasn't laughing anymore. The commander continued, not for drama, but for truth. She didn't choose her call sign. Her team gave it to her. The men alive today gave it to her. And they didn't give it because she talked. They gave it because she delivered. Sarah didn't look proud. She didn't smile. She didn't enjoy the shock on their faces. She simply nodded and said one thing. When do we leave? No hesitation. No fear. No ego. Just readiness. The commander answered. Wheels up in 40 minutes. You pick your support team. That line changed everything. Because now everyone in the room understood. This wasn't just a mission. This was leadership. And the quiet pilot they ignored was the one they'd now have to trust with their lives. A few pilots who mocked her earlier now stepped forward, volunteering without being asked. Not because she demanded respect, but because she earned it. Harris didn't move at first. He just stood there, holding his cup, replaying every joke he ever made about her in his head. Every laugh, every assumption, every insult. And for the first time he realized the truth. She never needed to prove herself to him. He was the one who needed to prove himself to her. Sarah didn't look at him with anger or revenge. She looked at him the same way she did on day one. Calm, unreadable, patient. Because she didn't care about winning arguments. She only cared about winning missions. While the others rushed to prepare, Harris stayed frozen where he was, finally understanding the difference between acting like a pilot and being one. The one they doubted was now the only one they needed. And the name he laughed at was now the name the mission depended on. The day after the incident, the whole base seemed to be talking about one thing, and one thing only, her. No one said her name directly, but everyone knew who they meant. The girl they thought was weak. The one they called extra weight. The one they believed didn't belong there. But yesterday, she changed everything. And now, even the loudest soldiers were suddenly quiet. Early in the morning, the soldiers gathered for physical training. Normally, this time was full of jokes, laughter, and loud voices. But today, there was a strange silence. Eyes kept shifting toward her, some with curiosity, some with confusion, some with hidden respect. She didn't look at anyone. She just tied her boots, stood in the line, and waited for orders, calm as always. The same drill sergeant who used to mock her walked in front of the team. Yesterday he was shouting at her. Today he didn't even raise his voice. It was like everyone was suddenly careful around her. Like they had discovered something dangerous, something powerful, something they were not supposed to know. Training started. Running, push-ups, climbing ropes, lifting sandbags. Everything that usually made others groan, she did without a single complaint. No sign of struggle. No sign of weakness. She didn't try to show off. She didn't do extra. She just did everything perfectly. And that made it even more shocking. One of the soldiers who used to make fun of her ran beside her and tried to talk. "Hey! So, that move you did yesterday." She didn't even look at him. He continued, "Where did you learn that?" She simply replied, "Training." That was it. No explanation, no bragging, no drama. The soldier didn't even know what to say after that. No one did. During the break, a group of soldiers sat together, whispering like kids who just discovered a secret file. "I heard she was special forces." "No way. She looks too calm for that." "Calm is the dangerous kind, genius." Someone else joined in. "I heard the commander saluted her." Everyone froze. A salute. That wasn't normal. Commander doesn't salute just anyone. Commander salutes rank. Commander salutes respect. Commander salutes legends. That moment, even the toughest guys realized, maybe she wasn't just another recruit. Later, during shooting practice, things got even more interesting. The instructor set up a moving target, something only advanced shooters could hit. Most of the soldiers missed or barely hit the edge. Then it was her turn. She didn't aim like everyone else. She didn't adjust her posture. She just stood there, lifted the rifle and fired once. Bullseye. Dead center. No hesitation. No wasted time. The instructor stared at her like he'd seen a ghost. He didn't even give the usual good job. He just nodded silently, like he knew exactly what kind of person she really was. One of the new guys whispered, "That wasn't luck. That was muscle memory." Another replied, "That was experience." Someone else added, "That was military silence. The kind you only get from real missions." The way they looked at her now was completely different. Before, they saw a girl who didn't belong. Now, they saw someone who had probably been in places they could only imagine. Someone who had survived things they couldn't even talk about. But the most interesting part? She didn't act like a hero. She didn't demand attention. She didn't try to correct anyone or explain who she was. She just trained like a normal soldier, blending in, keeping the truth buried under silence. That made her even more mysterious. By the end of the day, the rumors had spread so much that even the mess hall went quiet when she walked in. People moved aside to give her space, not out of fear, but out of unexpected respect. The same people who once ignored her were now watching her like she was a walking classified file. And somewhere outside, near the command office, the same commander who had saluted her stood by the window, watching her through the glass. He didn't smile. He didn't speak. He just whispered to himself. She wasn't supposed to be noticed this early. There was something bigger going on. Something no one else knew. She wasn't there by accident. She wasn't weak. She wasn't normal. She was placed there for a reason. And whatever that reason was, it hadn't started yet. That night, the base was quieter than usual. Most soldiers were tired after training, but no one was really sleeping. Minds were busy. Conversations were short. Everyone was still thinking about her. The girl who never spoke much, never complained, never showed off. Yet somehow she was better than all of them. Inside the barracks, a small group of soldiers sat together, pretending to play cards, but the real game was the same as before, trying to figure out who she really was. "I checked the records." One of them whispered. "Her file is almost empty. No background, no missions, nothing." "That's impossible," another replied. "Everyone has something in their file." "Yeah," the first one said, "unless the file is classified." The whole group went silent. Classified. That word didn't just mean secret. It meant dangerous. It meant hidden. It meant someone important was protecting her identity. Meanwhile, she was sitting alone on her bed, polishing her boots, quiet and focused. She wasn't bothered by the whispers, the stares, or the questions. She had lived around suspicion before. She knew how to stay invisible, even when people were looking directly at her. But there was something different in her eyes tonight, like she was thinking about something far away, maybe something she left behind. Just then, the door opened, A junior soldier walked in nervously and said, "Commander wants to see you. Now." Everyone in the room froze. Nobody got called by the commander at night. Not unless it was serious. She stood up, calm as always, put on her jacket and walked out. Not one word. Not one look back. She reached the command office. The door was closed. 2 guards stood outside. The moment they saw her, they stepped aside. No questions, no ID check. That alone was a message. She was expected. Inside, the commander was standing near a table full of sealed folders, satellite images and mission plans. He looked up as she entered. No salute. No formality. He just said her real call sign. Viper 1. She didn't react. For her, the name wasn't surprising. But to anyone else, it would have been shocking. That wasn't a normal call sign. That was a ghost-level code name. Only given to people who had done missions so silent, so dangerous, that even the military didn't admit they existed. The commander lowered his voice. "They're moving earlier than expected. We need you in position before the others even know what's happening." She nodded once. No fear. No hesitation. The commander continued, "The team you're training with, they don't know who you are. They don't need to. But soon, they'll be pulled into something real. And when that time comes, they'll follow you only if they trust you. That's why you're here." Now it made sense. She wasn't in training because she needed it. She was there to observe, test, and prepare the unit for something bigger. They thought she was the weakest one, but she was the one trained to keep them alive. "Do not break cover until I say so," the commander said. "No more surprises like yesterday. You scared half the base." She almost smiled, but didn't. "You'll get full mission details tomorrow," he added. "Until then, you're still just a recruit." "Understood." She finally spoke. "Understood." She turned to leave, but the commander said one more thing. "And Viper, you don't have to prove anything to them. You already proved it to us a long time ago." She walked out without answering. She didn't need to. Her silence was her strength. Outside, the night air was cold, but she didn't feel it. She had lived through harder things. She had walked through places where silence was louder than bullets, where shadows held more danger than enemies, where every step could be the last. She wasn't scared of being underestimated. She was scared of being recognized too soon. When she returned to the barracks, the others pretended to be asleep, but their eyes were half open. They watched her quietly. They didn't know why the commander wanted to see her, but they all felt it. It wasn't for something small. One soldier whispered to another, "Something's not right. She's not like us." The other replied softly, "Yeah, she's something else." And they were right. She wasn't there to fit in. She wasn't there to prove herself. She was placed in the unit for one purpose, a mission only she knew was coming. And soon, the day would arrive when these soldiers, who once doubted her, would have no choice but to trust her with their lives. Because when the real battle starts, the truth always comes out. The next morning started like any other. The sun was rising, the soldiers were gathering for training, and the usual noise of footsteps and commands filled the base. But something was different in the air. There was a strange tension, like the calm before a storm. Most of the soldiers still didn't know what was about to happen. They thought it was going to be another normal day of drills, shouting, and physical training. But for her, the day had already changed before anyone else even opened their eyes. At 4 a.m., she received a silent message on her device. No sound, no vibration, just a blinking code. Only someone like her would understand it. 3 numbers, a location, and one word, active. That meant the mission had begun. She got dressed in the standard uniform like everyone else, but inside her jacket, she was already carrying something the others didn't notice. A microchip key, a folded mission map, and a radio set with a frequency nobody else had access to. When she walked into the training field, the same soldier who once laughed at her call sign was standing there again, holding a mug of coffee. He still didn't respect her. He still thought she was nothing special. He smirked and said, "Ready for another slow day, Viper?" Before, she would have stayed quiet. But today, her silence wasn't needed anymore. She looked at him calmly and said, "You won't be joking in 5 minutes. He frowned, confused, but she walked past him without another word. Then, suddenly, the loud alarm of the base went off. Not the training alarm. Not the drill alarm. The real one. The one every soldier fears. A red light flashed across the field. Sirens echoed. The commander's voice came through the speakers. All units report to action stations. This is not a drill. Repeat. This is not a drill. The soldiers panicked. Some ran in the wrong direction. Some froze. Some started shouting questions. Nobody knew what was happening. Except her. She wasn't scared. She wasn't surprised. She was ready. She turned around, looked straight at the soldier who mocked her, and said, "Follow me if you want to live." He didn't laugh this time. His face went pale. His hands shook. The coffee cup almost slipped from his fingers. She moved fast, full control, full purpose. No hesitation. Her voice was steady and sharp. "You grab the medical kit. You get the comms unit. You secure the entrance. Move." The same soldiers who once ignored her now listened without argument. Something about her voice wasn't asking, it was commanding. One of them finally asked, "Who are you really?" She didn't answer. She just said, "You'll know soon enough." They reached the armory, but the door didn't open with normal access cards. The others panicked. "We can't get in." She stepped forward, took out the hidden microchip key, and touched the panel. The door unlocked instantly. All eyes went wide. The soldier who mocked her whispered, "How did you?" She cut him off. "No time. Load up." They entered the equipment room, and for the first time the unit saw something they had never noticed before. Inside one of the weapon lockers was a sealed case with her real call sign on it. Viper 1, level black access. Everything made sense in that moment. She hadn't been pretending. She hadn't been weak. She wasn't one of them. She was above them. That was when the commander arrived. He didn't shout, didn't give orders. He looked directly at the team and said, "You are no longer in training. You are now under her command. Mission details will be given by Viper 1 only." The soldiers were stunned. The commander continued, "She has more field time than all of you combined. She has completed missions that don't exist on paper. She is the reason we still have a chance today. From this moment on, you listen to her, or you don't make it back." The man who laughed at her earlier couldn't even look her in the eye now. His ego had melted into fear and respect. He wasn't holding a coffee mug anymore. He was holding a rifle, waiting for her orders. She finally spoke, looking straight at the team. "The enemy is already moving. We're the only unit close enough to intercept. We leave in 3 minutes. No emotion, no panic, just control." They followed her, not because they were forced to, but because they finally understood who she truly was. She wasn't a joke. She wasn't a recruit. She was the silent weapon the military called when every other option failed. And now, the man who laughed at her call sign would soon learn the truth the hard way, that the world only laughs until the real danger arrives. After that, they pray for someone like her. Someone like Viper 1.